Resilience Plus Rise, the podcast where resilience is not just a concept but a lived experience. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria, a resilience coach, an ultra marathoner, and a relentless believer in the human spirit's ability to rise. This podcast is a companion to my book, Resilience Plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash Your Marathon of Life Mindset. Each episode is a raw, unfiltered dive into the stories of those who have faced life's hardest battles and emerged stronger. I had just mentioned a statement, resilience, not just a concept, but a lived experience. Today, it's an honor. The guest I have on my podcast, Deb Krier. She's an entrepreneur, but more than that, she's an advocate about living life, not just existing through life, but living life. She's got a website. Get this, guys. Trying not to die. I'll be putting the information down in the comments below. So, if you have got a website of that manner, you can imagine the force that she is. She combines her business acumen, a lived experience, and a certification as an integrative cancer coach. Yes, that's a space. Rather than just talking more, I could go hours, if not days, about what Deb is all about. Let's just jump and have a conversation with Deb on Resilience Plus Rise, the podcast. Deb, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, Thomas, thank you so much for having me as a guest. We're going to have such a fun discussion. And I have to say, I love that you are an ultra marathoner. I run to the refrigerator. Does that count?
It does. It does. It depends on what you're opening the refrigerator for. As they say,
Hi.
a life always has goals, right?
This is
It
true.
depends on it depends on what your goals are.
Mhm.
So having said that, goals.
Mhm.
Let's start with the one of the best gifts that you got
Mhm.
when you realize life is not just a straight path of line through existence. There are some challenges, and
Mhm.
you have met a few of them. Tell the story.
Well, we don't have all day, so I'll give you the Reader's Digest version.
Fantastic.
Um, Life was going merrily along about 10 and a half years ago. And I went and had my annual checkup. Long story short, they diagnosed breast cancer, but said, meh, not going to be a big deal. In fact, I didn't even get an oncologist. They were saying it was pre-cancer. And eventually we did do a little bit more detailed surgery so that we could, run some better biopsies. And I went from a stage 0 precancerous diagnosis to stage 3 diagnosis. Poof, just like that, right? Because the cancer had spread. They had been saying
Okay.
hasn't spread, it hasn't spread, and it had spread. So then I did get an oncologist. She I love her. I still see her every 3 weeks. We started treatment, and I decided, based on a lot of things, but I decided to go with the traditional approach, right? I tell people you
Okay.
got to pick what's going to work for you, not
Hmm.
anybody else, not what the doctor says. Pick what works for you. And so I was going to do chemotherapy, surgery, radiation. Well, I did chemotherapy and from my first treatment, I got a
Okay.
complication that happens less than 1% of the time. And at that point in time, I was the only person that had ever survived it. My oncologist actually had lost another patient to the same complication, so she knew what it was. So they
Okay.
were able to step in, do what they needed to do. I spent 7 weeks in the hospital, in and out of ICU, in and out of surgeries. I did go into septic shock, which is 75-ish% of the time fatal. I remember the doctors arguing over how fast I was going to die that day. And it was like,
And
it's
you are
weird.
listening to the conversation.
Yes. And I was like, hey, I get to vote. Hello. And my husband said it was a little bit different, but he said that basically was what the conversation was. And there were actually 3 times that my husband has been told, we're not sure that she's going to make it. And every time I thought,
Fantastic. Okay.
and so I did have surgery. I opted to do a double mastectomy without reconstructive surgery. Got a complication from that my doctor had never seen because, I do these things. Had no problem with radiation, which, they were all really surprised at because I am the fair-headed, redheaded, freckly kid. And so they had assumed that I would get radiation burns and I didn't. But the whole time I kept working for the most part, just kept going along. In the last 10 and a half years I have. And so ultimately my diagnosis though was stage 4 triple positive metastatic breast cancer, which that's not a good diagnosis, but I have now hit my 10-year mark with no recurrence. And so that's very, very important. We were talking before the program about being blessed. Yes. But along the way, I had 2 more cancer diagnoses. I had basal cell carcinoma, which to me, that's the one that sounds the worst, right? Ugh.
What is that?
Skin cancer.
Oh, okay.
And considering that I grew up in Colorado at an elevation of over 8,000 feet, long before anybody knew anything about sunscreen, it was really surprising I got to my age without ever having any issues. And then 3 years ago, I did develop thyroid cancer, and it is a totally separate cancer. It is not in any way related to the breast cancer. So I've had 3 separate diagnoses of cancer because I'm the overachiever. But all along, I just kept going, right? Like you said, it's about resilience. How are we going to keep going?
There are, I believe, in my podcast, I'm quite comfortable in asking questions, but there are times
Mhm.
wherein I need to just pause.
I
And
know it's a little overwhelming.
it is because, okay, 1 curveball, 2 curveball, 3
Mhm.
curveballs, and
Mhm.
again, with cancer or your body just
Mhm.
uh, saying, okay, no, okay, seems to be okay. Now let me try something
Mhm.
else.
Yeah, let's pick a new one.
What has got my attention, Deb,
Mhm.
in this last few
Mhm.
minutes of our
Mhm.
initial talk
Mhm.
is that attitude,
Mhm.
which is so very much obvious. Literally jumps out of the screen. Thank you for that presence.
Mhm.
So, you've been working with business leaders, and
Mhm.
forget about business leaders, you have been leading your
Mhm.
own
Mhm.
self.
Mhm.
If you look through the last 10 plus years
Mhm.
that life has been putting across, whether these are we call it
Mhm.
as the curveballs
Mhm.
or the challenges, I
Mhm.
usually put it
Mhm.
as the challenges of life.
Mhm.
You had an open invitation to be a victim or a martyr.
Mhm.
Or you could raise your hands and say, bring it on.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if I look in the last 10 plus years, if talk about maybe 3 to 5 key lessons
Mhm.
that you
Mhm.
have come across, what would those be, Deb?
Well, I think the first one is it's okay to be angry, to be mad, to grieve. I am not always Miss Happy Go Lucky. I say bad words.
Ouch!
I know when they call to tell, and now when your doctor calls, that's never a good sign, right? When
Mhm.
they pop up in the caller ID, they're not calling to say, Thomas, everything's great. And so when my doctor called to tell me I had thyroid cancer, she said, yeah, it's papillary thyroid cancer. And I said, oh, blankety blank. Now I live in the South, and ladies do not swear in the South.
Mhm.
you know? And so she laughed and she said, see, that's why you're going to get through this. But it's perfectly fine to have that anger. Give yourself the grace to feel what you're going to feel, because you hear that you've got the word cancer and your brain shorts out,
Sure.
and it
Mm.
doesn't matter how serious or not serious. You just think it's going to kill me. And so give yourself the grace to feel what you're going to feel, and then kind of shake it off. Go on with how you're going to do it. Like you said, bring it on, bring it on. Now there were times where it was like, nah. I mean, I remember one time when, and I don't even remember what number surgery it was. I've had so many. I looked at my husband and I said, what did I do to deserve this? Really, what did I do?
Hmm.
And, we both kind of snuffled a bit. And then it was like, okay, we've had the pity party. Now we're going to go on again. But yeah, feel all those emotions, and that's okay. But one of the things that has definitely gotten me through it, and you can probably guess, is to laugh. We have to laugh about, you really have to laugh about what's happened. I mean, it's just like, seriously, a third diagnosis. And but there are actually medical studies from very reputable places that show how important laughter is.
True.
There are medical reasons, medical benefits. And so laughing is a great way to get through it. And I always try and make my care teams laugh, because they've got really hard jobs. They're dealing with people who are dying. So can I make them laugh? And so can I do that? Now, I'm serious when I need to be serious, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do that. But yeah, I try and make them laugh and enjoy things. And then, the other thing that I really try to do is exactly what we were saying. You got to just live your life. We don't know how long we're going to be here for. I have a mental image and I don't know where this came from, of me at 97. And I don't know why 97. It's just of me at 97. Who knows if that's going to come true or not?
Why not?
Why
Why not?
not? Yeah.
And again, as they say, it's not
Mhm.
how long, but how well
Yes.
we live.
Yes. Yeah. And so that is kind of why I named the initiative Trying Not to Die.LIVE, because we get so caught up in trying to not die that we forget that we have to live. And maybe it's 5 hours, right? Maybe it's 50 years, who knows? But how are we going to live our life during that time? Many years ago, I worked for an oncologist, and I worked for the American Cancer Society. So I know, I know just enough to be dangerous, right? But the oncologist I worked, this is over 35 years ago. And I remember him telling patients, 99% of this is in your head. If you think you're going to live, you will live. If you think you're going to die, you will die. Now, in many cases, people were terminal,
Mm.
but it was how did they live their lives in those last hours, days, weeks, whatever it was.
That's powerful. And again, I do believe we all are energy in our own
Mhm,
ways.
mhm,
And whether it is the laughter, whether it is venting it out
mhm,
rather than
mhm.
holding the
Right.
emotions
Mhm, mhm,
inside wherein it tends to fester more.
mhm,
Or I believe there was one small element that you mentioned. It was just a little more than a passing reference,
mhm,
was mm, giving a smile to the caregivers.
mhm, mhm,
And that comes in as how you're transforming your own energy
mhm,
and helping them to see the
mhm,
brighter side of
mhm.
things.
Right.
And that, Deb, that's, I believe, has been such a gift. And that their silent thanks
Mhm,
would be a reflection of your recovery.
mhm. Right. I have a multitude of doctors, as you can guess, and I actually saw my kidney doctor this week, and I'm almost always one of her last appointments. And they just do that. And one of the times when I was there, she said, I always try and see you last. And I said, well, yeah, because I talk so much, I mess up your schedule. And and she said, no, you make me laugh. And so now, of course, I have to, right? I have to make her laugh. But yeah, I mean, I have doctors that say, we hate to say it, but we're glad to see you again. You know? And and I am still in active treatment. I go in every 21 days. And so one of the things that I do to make people laugh, now again, only if they know me, because I don't want to mess anything up. What is your name and date of birth? And I look at them and I say, I'm Anastasia Beaverhausen. I don't know where that came from. That just,
Okay.
and so in the infusion room at the cancer center, they've decided it's Princess Anastasia
Anastasia.
Beaverhausen. And so one must do the queen wave, right? You know,
Ah,
and all the other patients that are back in there, you can see they're thinking, you know, and
royalty
yes,
in
or
the
I tell
house.
them, I say, well, I've been coming here a while, but then I also do things like, that staff very, very unappreciated, right? As we're doing this, yesterday was actually National Nurses Appreciation Day. Are
Okay.
superheroes, right?
Okay.
Um, but they're busy people, and so I help out where I can. I get people drinks, I do all sorts of things. And they all look at me and they say, "How long have you been coming here?" And
Wonderful.
I don't want to scare them by saying 10 years, but yeah, we have to laugh at it. And we have to laugh at the absurdity of it, right?
Well, that's how you look. And again, as it's said, right? That's this
Mhm,
statement: we propose and God laughs.
mhm, mhm. Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah. We
so,
plan and God really laughs. God has had a good laugh at me. Or my guardian angel. I have posted that on social media before of my guardian angel just going, "Oh, again."
so Deb, actually, another part of you is yes, you give a spark, more than a spark of brightness to other people's life, a beacon that you're carrying, but also you do help C-suite
Mhm,
executives
mhm,
who are faced with the life's
mhm,
challenges.
mhm,
You're a coach for
mhm,
them.
mhm. Right.
If you could just give me a brief
Right.
overview on that.
Well, it's my people, right? I own
Mm,
my own business. I have been there, done that. And one of the things that I have really found is, fortunately, the vast majority of times when someone is dealing with a cancer diagnosis or things like that, it does go very well. Many times people don't even know.
mm,
But when it doesn't go well, or when you're expecting, a longer period of treatment, you might be losing your hair, you're going to look at all those various things. How, as that business owner or that C-suite person, do you deal with that? Because the first thing you're thinking is exactly what I thought. I'm sorry, I don't have time for this. But
mm,
more importantly, you think, I can't tell anybody because they're going to think I can't do my job.
mm,
And so and I tell people, you have to be comfortable with what it is you're saying. For some people like me, I do tend to give as much detail, and I'll tell people, ask whatever you want. I'll answer the questions. But for many people, they really don't want to talk about it. It's a very personal and private thing.
mhm,
Um, but we want to control that narrative, because if we're looking a little rough, if we're coming in late, if we lost our hair, all these various things, if you haven't told people even just a little bit, they make it up,
mm.
and they never make it up well. And so, you want to control that narrative. And so maybe it's just saying, hey, team, I'm going through a health issue right now. I'll let you know as much as I can, but I'm going to need your help. And that's one of the key things, is you want to ask them for their help.
Help.
Yes. And that's one of the hardest things for us to do, right?
Mm,
Because, oh my gosh, back to they can't think I can't do my job. Um, and so, what I work with people on is business tactics. The medical side, they've got people to deal with. I'm the person that's going to say, do you have a business continuity plan? Let's make sure you've got that. What's your crisis management? That is my background, is crisis management planning, the bad what ifs. But take that on a positive side. What if you want to go on vacation? Do you want to be bothered every other minute by somebody calling you, or do you want to go
mm.
on vacation? But we hire intelligent, smart, knowledgeable, skilled people. Let's let them do what they're supposed to do. Let's empower them. Let's let them shine, right? And maybe they do take over some of the tasks that you used to do. Okay, that frees you up for something else.
That's so wonderful. And in fact, that reminds me of Steve Jobs, the
Mm-hmm,
quote that he used to say,
mm-hmm,
"What if today is your last day of
mm-hmm,
on
mm-hmm.
this earth?
Right.
How
Yeah.
would you make it meaningful?"
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and there is one of those ancient, I think so. It is one of the monastic
Mhm.
areas. Memento mori,
Mm.
wherein people have like at least once a month they talk
Mhm.
about, okay, if today is
Mhm.
going to be the last day,
Mhm.
well,
Right.
what's
Mhm.
going to happen?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
at times we feel that it will happen in the neighbor's
Mhm.
house, but it could
Mhm.
happen in our own,
Mhm. Right.
to our own
Mhm.
self. Forget about
Right.
anybody else, but it
Right.
could be happen
Mhm.
to our own self.
Mhm. Right.
Wow, this could be deep.
Mhm.
So, Deb, anyway, just being a little mindful of time.
Mhm. Oh, yes. Mhm.
If you had something to impart to the
Mhm.
listeners,
Mhm.
a pearl, a wisdom, a gem,
Mhm.
something that has elevated you
Mhm.
to the person that you are,
Mhm.
what would that be?
I think the biggest thing that I always tell people is you are in charge, not your
Hmm.
doctors, not your boss. You are in charge. And especially in this, because it is very serious. Just yesterday, I was supposed to make an appointment with a doctor, and I already knew the doctor. I didn't like them. And
Oh,
so I they didn't get my sense of humor. So no, right. Um, and I had a referral to this person. And so I had called to make the appointment. And I told the person at the appointment desk, when she said who it was, she said, "Oh, you've seen him before." And I said, "Oh, I would prefer to see someone else."
hmm,
And she laughed. And I thought, oh dear, I'm not the first one who's had a problem. But, that you are the person who's being treated. And if you are not comfortable with the people on your care team, if you're not comfortable with the decisions that are being made, step up and say something. And if for some reason you're not able to, then you need to have an advocate, who is going to do that. But you are in charge, and it's that way with everything. You are in charge of your life.
beautiful.
And obviously for so many people, their faith is very important.
Hmm.
But God is also going to say, okay, you got a part in this too. So yeah, it's you are the person who is in charge of this.
Is there anything else that comes to your mind?
You know,
So
I
again, because when I say you're in charge, people can
Mhm,
take it both
mhm,
as I can still be,
mhm,
I can take the
mhm,
charge of being a victim and
mhm,
a
mhm,
also,
mhm.
or
Right.
I can
Mhm,
just come out and shine.
mhm. And it was interesting. I listened to one of your other podcasts, and they were talking about, are you the victim? And being the victim means there's a bad guy.
Hmm.
And it's like I said at the first, it's okay to kind of feel bad, feel sorry for yourself. But do you want to be that person that is the victim? Or do you want to be the person who says, no, I'm going to take charge of this? I'm going to say how I live the last days of my life. And I don't want my headstone to say, I wish I would have.
Ah, so beautiful. In fact, actually, one of my guests, she had mentioned it was so beautifully, so profound, is that we all talk about the hero's journey, but
Mhm,
to
mhm,
understand for a hero's journey, you got
mhm.
to have a
You have to
villain,
have an anti-hero. Mhm,
anti-hero.
mhm,
So
mhm,
whom are you
mhm.
fighting
Right,
against? Or are
right.
you really having
Mhm,
fight? Are you really fighting?
mhm,
Or as you mentioned,
mhm,
if you're kind, not only to the universe around, but to your
mhm,
own body also.
mhm,
That's when your body
mhm,
responds. And I've
mhm,
just realized in the last minutes that we've been
mhm,
talking, the kindness does not just come about you, it's through
mhm,
you.
mhm.
I
Right.
know it's going through
Mhm,
the different parts of the
mhm,
body where there
mhm,
has been
mhm,
areas wherein it feels I need to come
mhm,
out, and unfortunately, it's coming out in a different way, what
mhm.
more than what you expected.
Right.
Deb, I can say only is that thank you for your space and time.
Oh,
And guys, guys,
mhm,
guys, I will be putting out Deb's information down in the comments below. Have a look onto it. Have a look onto it. Who knows? It might be a light whether somebody you may know or maybe somebody third person. But no harm in checking out. No harm in connecting and asking, hey, listen, this is happening. I'm feeling miserable. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling confused. I'm feeling defeated. Well, you got a person over here who has gone through challenges, curveballs, as she says. And here we are. She's smiling. She's laughing. And she believes, and I believe in her, is that 97 is the number that she will say Laughing, smiling, maybe dancing,
Mhm,
right onto the headstone. I've lived life.
mhm.
Deb, thank you so very much for your space and
Um,
time. It has
thank
just
you,
been
Thomas.
wonderful.
Such a delight, such a delight.
Thank you.